Probably a quick one tonight. I am reasonably tired after a double shift. Actually, I'm a tired enough person that I may play around a little bit. Let's see if this can see me through the... Doesn't want to look through it. All right, fine. It was an idea. So, double shift tonight, late. Things I'm working on. I can't even remember what I'm supposed to be working on right now. One of the little side projects that I've been playing around with lately has been doing some game design. So kind of trying to build up a from the ground up RPG style game for tabletop, but hopefully something I should be able to encode into something in like an RPG maker or something that I can transfer over. Because one of the things I remember fondly from games when I was younger was a series of games. There's a series of games when I was younger that I used to play. They're the Gold Box games. And actually, I think I have a link to some of them somewhere. You can download them now online. So Pool of Radiance. I can't remember the rest of them. Curse of the Azure Bonds is one of them. And they're from Strategic Simulations Incorporated was the company who produced them. And they were, oh God, I gotta, God. Anyway, Strategic Simulations Incorporated produced these games, and the engine they used to create them was a translation of tabletop role-playing games into a video game format. Now, it's not a perfect translation, and so there's some definite corner cutting going on. But I always felt like there's got to be a way to do that exact same thing translated over to more modern gameplay devices. And so there's a part of me that would love to build, I'd love to be able to build a role-playing game that you can do through your phone or a laptop or over the internet. Now, there's a lot of things like Roll20 and Tabletop Simulator where you can use them in your games. But that's not the same thing as what I'm talking about. Like in Forgotten Realms style RPG games that you can play through the Strategic Simulations Incorporated games, you are a single player. It's not a multiplayer online game. And so there's a basic adventure storyline done up in this game that are like a lot of the single player games that are out there. The recent Cyberpunk game came out, you know, with all its glitches and everything, is a single player. It's not a multiplayer online game. It's a single player game where you build a character and play the role. And so there's a part of me feels like, yeah, there's some of that you can do there. But I kind of want to be able to make something that we can take a almost like a Mad Libs. So build a basic structure of adventures that can be played, and allow somebody to, transpose into it any number of modules that you can get for role-playing games. Because that's the thing is, out there right now, unbeknownst to most people who don't play tabletop RPGs, is a lifetime's worth of adventures to be had if you could just translate those modules. Like, you can go on eBay, you can go on Drive-Through RPG, and there are going to be hundreds of thousands of individual adventure games that you could put into a computer game if you had the ability to do certain features in a video game. So part of that is down to the game structure for a lot of those modules for tabletop role-playing games are built around the idea that there's going to be a dungeon master to mediate certain events during the course of the game. And so the characters meet this NPC character, and they're going to have to figure out how they go forward with this. There is no like script for that interaction necessarily. There's a bit of an outline that you follow if you want to do some of the printed modules. But I feel like it would be fairly reasonably easy to do a translation of something like Tomb of Horrors as a playthrough test. Tomb of Horrors and some of the old school style games, I feel like would be fairly easy to do. A more recent version of a game called The Curse of Strahd is a hearty book of adventure to play through at a table with a game master or a dungeon master. But I feel like that wouldn't port as easily into a video game version of that. But that's something you could probably work a way around in scripting something a little more in the tabletop role-playing game environment. It's called railroading. Like, the game is on rails. It's going to have to happen in a very set kind of way. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you did it right, you could make a pretty impressive and interesting game. And part of that is, if you look at games like The Last of Us, like, the story for The Last of Us is pretty hardcore scripted. Your role at any given point is to just navigate through a map. There's a place you start at and a place you're supposed to end up at to continue this story. And you don't have the option of wandering into any other part of that territory. Like, you can go and wander around and get lost and be lost for hours. That's fine. But the story's not going to progress until you go to point B. And so games like that are very linear, railroaded storylines. In tabletop role-playing games, that's sort of a no-no. You do not railroad your players. It's not a nice way. Like, it's part of the reason they're there at a table to play the game is because it gives them more detailed control over what they're going to do in the course of that game. Like, you literally give them the chance to break the game. Like, if you were to build a sequential story, a tabletop RPG game is built on the idea that the players can walk off that path and go do something completely unrelated. And so video games don't do that necessarily particularly well. But I feel like the easy way around that would be to simply just take those modules that are meant for tabletop role-playing games and trim away some of the extra access to doing whatever you want. Basically, doing a playthrough of it where only certain things can happen in the course of those events. So I do think there's a way to translate a lot of those kinds of modules over, but I haven't tried it out yet. But in the meantime, one of the things I've been playing with was trying to construct a tabletop role-playing game system that I can use for some of my own game design stuff, but is also different and somewhat unique in its own way. And regardless of whether or not I can do this with it, I will probably publish it as a tabletop role-playing game. But there's a part of me that wants to see if there's a way I can make it also translate over into a video game role-playing scenario. And, RPG Maker may let me publish a couple of adventures as downloadable games, but the real appeal to me at a certain point would be to make it so that I give you the framework and you can make other games in it. So one of my favorite games when I was younger, one of my favorite computer games, was a game called Escape Velocity. And Escape Velocity was one of my favorite games because, A, it was just kind of fun, because it was a very sandbox style game, which is a term used in video games as well as tabletop playing games, that I could be a pilot of a spaceship and not advance the storyline in any direction, and there were still these little repeating game loops that I can go through. Go to certain port and buy stuff on the commodities market, load it on my ship, go traveling into uncharted territories to risk getting attacked by pirates, attacking the pirates who came after me, disabling their ship, boarding their ship and looting their ship, and occasionally capturing one of their ships and using it as a personal escort from then on. Like, I love doing that. And then take my cargo back to another place where I can sell it for more than I bought it for on a commodities market. I love doing that. Like, I didn't need to progress the storyline any further. I could spend the entire game doing that, buying upgrades to my ships off of the profits that I made off of these runs, and just have a blast with it. I did that for entire summers in my junior high school and high school years. And I think it would be fun to be able to do something like that style of game. But also, here's the thing. The Escape Velocity games had this feature that you could change the sprites used on the spaceships, the artwork for the planets, the effects for jumping to light speed, the images used on the planetary interface. You can change the different commodities. You could change the different upgrade components for your ships. You could change the different ships, not only the images, but their stats and their capabilities and their features. Like, you could change all of those with little plugins that you could build and then drop them on top of the game and make a whole new game. Like, you could take a whole new game. There were people who took this Escape Velocity game and its sequels, Escape Velocity Overdrive and Escape Velocity Nova. There are people who took these entire game series, built what are called total conversions, where they made Star Wars ships like the X-Wing and the Millennium Falcon and all those other ships, the base ships that you could use. They changed the alliances and the rebellions and all the interfering factors in those things to Star Wars-based characters, and events going on. They changed plot strings to be entire strings of Star Wars themed stories. And like that whole ability to alter those games is something that I sort of always loved about that game series. Now, this is something that, we recently talked about something similar to this, which was what they essentially did for these games was make it not only possible, but encouraged to do ROM hacking. So when we talked about this before, when we were talking about whether or not I do video game playthroughs and whatnot and stuff like that, that's essentially what this was. It was reskinning ships, changing some of their stats. A reskin of a game is one thing, but changing some of their stats would be more difficult. They built escape velocity games to make that possible. You could build a little plugin, you drop in the plugins folder and turn on, and it changed the game completely. And to a certain degree, doing something similar with ROM hacking, you can take the images of the artwork, you can do a level change, and all of the things involved with those. And it's a ROM hack, essentially. And I like the idea of potentially being able to do that with... I mean, I don't know if I'll be able to do it with RPG Maker, but I'd like to be able to build a system of RPG style game that is simple to start with, uses maybe some of my tabletop RPG game design that I'm working on, and converts it to playing video games with, computer RPG game plays with, but also has the possibility of ROM hacking it to make it so that you can make your own adventures to play in that game. To me, that would be the ideal situation. But I don't know how much of that is possible right now. I'm in the midst of designing the tabletop playing game, and once I've sort of really hashed out where I think I can take the rules for that, I'll see what potentially can be translated over into a computer-based version of it. But, oh God, I'm so tired. I'm going to be super tired for the next 2 days too, so short one tonight, I guess. I can't remember what else. That's sort of where my brain is right now. So that was the RPGs that I've been playing with right now. I can't fathom what else I'm thinking of doing, but I guess it leaves us something to talk about on Sunday. So I think I'm probably going to call it here tonight. It's 12:30 anyway. I will catch you later. Hope you're doing well. I hope I don't have another week like this coming up next week. I just don't have it in me. I got things I want to do. So take care and have a good night. It's starting to feel kind of cold in here. I wonder if the heater kicked off. We'll find out.